Darth Vader's transformation came about suddenly out of a need to save his wife from what he perceived to be certain death. While his turn may have been quick, his fall from grace certainly was not. With the pressure of the galaxy on the Chosen One's shoulders, he had decided to act selfishly, and he fell to the dark side. But what many don't give credit for is that Anakin didn't exactly forgive Sidious for being the mastermind behind the war just because he was Palpatine. Anakin may have acted foolishly, but he was no fool, and he planned to avenge all those who had suffered and died because of Palpatine's actions. Indeed, Anakin had made plans to kill Lord Sidious. Those plans he had stated out plainly to Padme on Mustafar when he was trying to show her that he still had the right ideas, however misplaced they truly were. Anakin only ever cared about learning the secret to save Padme. He didn't really care about seeking the deeper mysteries of the Force or really the Sith at all. The dark side to him was a means to an end, and after having to hold himself back for so long, Vader no longer desired to fear his own anger, but rather embrace it. But our researchers have recently uncovered something rather worrying. Palpatine knew Vader would betray him all along. In fact, he had entirely expected it. So my friends, in today's Holocron, we will be talking about Sidious's thoughts towards Vader's betrayal, and how he actually wanted it to happen. Before we begin though, we have sensed a terrible disturbance in the Force. We have sensed that many of the individuals using our archives today have not yet subscribed to our order. So, if you find yourself among this group, fear not, reach out with the Force and crush that subscribe button. It is your destiny. Our source today comes from the novelization for Revenge of the Sith, in which we find out through Vader's personal thoughts that he was ready to destroy Sidious at a moment's notice. This happened directly after he slaughtered all the Separatist leaders, and he was standing on the walkway overlooking the lava world of Mustafar beneath him. The novelization says this: he could feel his power growing indeed. He had the measure of his master already. Not long after Palpatine shared the secrets of Darth Plagueis' discovery, their relationship would undergo a sudden transformation. A fatal transformation. Lord Vader's grand plan was quite clear, and he believed that he would be fulfilling the prophecy of the Chosen One by doing this. However, Darth Sidious had seen this coming a mile away. In the beginning of the now Legends novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, we get to see in the minds of both Vader as well as Sidious as they reflect on the events that brought them to where the Empire now stood. The events of this novelization happen only a mere few weeks following the events of Mustafar and the conclusion of the Clone Wars. As Vader struggles to regain his identity and console what happened to both Padme and himself, he fails to see the light at the end of the tunnel, nor grasp any sort of resolve that would mend his emotional state. Because of this, Darth Vader is depressed, weak, and very negative. He mostly just moped around his Star Destroyer, not doing very much outside of constructing his lightsaber or meditating. And Sidious had of course taken notice of this. The Emperor relished in his victory, but in that moment of elation, he did take some time to reflect and meditate on the events that had transpired. In his ruminations, he often reflected on what might have been had Vader not been spoiled on Mustafar. In Sidious's thoughts, the novel tells us this: fundamental to Vader's growth was the desire to overthrow his master. Had Vader killed Obi-Wan on Mustafar, he might have attempted to kill Sidious. In fact, Sidious would have been surprised if Anakin hadn't made an attempt. This line shows us that not only was Sidious expecting Anakin's betrayal, he was anticipating it to the point where he would have been surprised and maybe even concerned if Vader had not attempted it. Betrayal was one of the ways the Sith and Sidious knew that as soon as Anakin embraced the dark side, betrayal would become his way as well. Vader was unfortunately laboring under the assumption that betraying his master was going to be easy, something he could pull off quickly and get away with without too much trouble. But little did he know that his ideas of learning his master's secrets and then disposing of him wasn't revolutionary to the Sith in the slightest. This information honestly makes me very concerned for what might have happened to Anakin had he made this attempt. Contrary to popular belief, Sidious was prepared. There exists an alternate ending to the Revenge of the Sith game for PS2, one that explores this very idea. In the game, Anakin manages to land behind Obi-Wan and stab him before kicking him down to the lava bank. Immediately after, he is greeted by Sidious, who gives him a new red lightsaber. Anakin admires it for a moment, before immediately tossing it up in the air and stabbing Sidious right through the stomach, killing him instantly. While the situation is quite interesting, this would absolutely never happen according to the Legend's lore. Let's say he kills Obi-Wan without issue, and then meets with Sidious. First off, he wouldn't have killed the Emperor immediately, but rather would have waited until he learned the secrets, assuming there was any information at all to be learned. Sidious would see Vader's turn coming a mile away, and would be ready for him as the novel explains. We need to remember that while Anakin is indeed powerful, especially while boosted in the dark side, there is no matching up to who was basically the Yoda of the Sith. Anakin's potential was insanely high, and he would have definitely surpassed the Emperor eventually, but not right away. Sidious was the culmination of the rule of two, and at this point in time, he knew too much. Kenobi would not be the one to impart upon him the lesson of overconfidence, but rather, it would be the Emperor who would be ready. Sidious would have certainly defeated and likely crippled Vader for a time, of course not as severely as Kenobi did. But by doing this, Sidious would have established himself on top of the pecking order and ensured Anakin would be humbled before him, at least for a short amount of time. As far as Sidious's long-term plans in this scenario, we aren't entirely sure, but we can make some speculations. We mentioned earlier how Sidious actually wanted Vader to betray him, or at least make the attempt on his life. But what's shocking about this passage is that when Sidious is talking about it, he wants Vader to make an attempt in his life after he is within his suit. The novel says this: had Vader killed Obi-Wan on Mustafar, he might have attempted to kill Sidious. In fact, Sidious would have been surprised if Anakin hadn't made an attempt. Now, however incapable of so much as breathing on his own, Vader could not rise to the challenge, and Sidious understood that he would need to do everything in his power to shake Vader out of his despair and reawaken the incredible power that lay within him, even at Sidious's own peril. What an insane plot by the Sith. Sidious was so desperate to have Vader reclaim that power that he was willing to actually put himself in danger in order to provoke Vader and forcefully draw out his rage. In certain ways, this changes everything we knew about their relationship. After Mustafar, Sidious speaks to Vader with a certain level of contempt in his voice and is quite hard on his apprentice. There are many times when he even antagonizes Vader, as we are all very well aware. It may seem as though Sidious is purposefully going out of his way to punish Vader, but now we know that he is stoking the fires of Vader's rage and hatred by making himself the object of Vader's wrath. In doing so, he can finally draw out all the power that he lost on the shores of Mustafar. It would even seem that Sidious was half successful. We know that Vader grows exponentially in power past this point, and could still contend and overcome with even the most skilled and powerful Force wielders. But he never grew to the heights that Sidious had wanted. Still, Vader's power grew to a point where there were certain cases that we know of in canon that Sidious became a bit wary of his apprentice, and had to do things to mitigate Vader's rage and keep him in place. But in a twisted way, it was all for Sidious's purpose that Vader would desire to overthrow him, to cause him to grow in power. But anyway, my friends, this is how Palpatine responded to knowing Anakin was going to turn against him. We definitely want to hear your thoughts about this, and tell us, what would you have done if you were Sidious in this position? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, may the Force be with you.